Is that really a power? They are middle-sized powers. Can they play a role alone in the global arena? I doubt that. And all the others, I don't see that. That's the military part. But at the same time, we have two additional challenges. The economy, beyond the horizon, the big China is rising as a real challenge that the Germans had an illusion. We are an import market for the Chinese. Do Europe have an impact? Do the Europeans have an impact in the technology of the future? Digitalization? Not really. We are dependent on mostly big tech companies from America or China. That's the reality. And a second element, we have to be realistic. We have a disadvantage in the military power, we have a disadvantage in technological power, in trade. So, and we are not united. I would be very optimistic if the European leaders would have said, okay, the world has changed and will change dramatically. We must now unite. How, in which form, it will be discussed. But this element of unity, I don't see. And last, which you didn't mention, is nationalism in Europe. Will France, the axis, I have to apologize to our Italian guest, but the axis Bonn, Berlin, and Paris was essential for the development of the European Union. What will happen in France in the next presidential elections? Can the European Union survive a president from the far right in France?
What will happen in Germany?
I come to that. We are slightly better off. I think.
I mean, I'm Italian, so.
No, I'm
you can be open with me.
This is a huge question. And it, honestly, I'm thinking a lot of that. Because if Germany would go down this road, if Germany followed nationally, we would pay a much higher price than France or any other European member states because of our history. The EU was more for us. It was for our exports, for our industry, but it was also important for a rebirth of German credibility. And if Germany would move down that nationalistic road with a vote for AfD, we would lose that credibility. And this would be a complete disaster for us. So you're right to raise these questions. We have a small advantage compared to France. We have more stability. Whether tomorrow, I don't know. We have a strange government with a strange chancellor, which I don't understand. So, but this nationalistic challenge is the biggest threat we are facing. So we face complete change in the global order, and the old order will not come back. We see a transformation in our relationship with the US, our protector and our friend for decades, is turning into a rival or even worse. Let's face it, we are alone. And the Europeans are definitely not up to the challenge. There, I don't share your view. If Europe, the alternative of Europe is a new founding phase in military terms, in hard power terms, but also in new technologies and in the economy. We need a new, whether you like it or not, I say it, a new founding figure like Adenauer was. It's a matter of fact. And I don't believe that our chancellor today is such a founding figure. But what's the alternative? Thank you very much.
Okay, I think you raised two questions I would like to briefly discuss here before we open up for questions from the audience. And I think you put it very nicely. Is Europe up for the challenge? And if not, is there someone else who's been? I think the first question is both actually relate to the question, how important has the United States been for the rule-based global order? Right? And can Europe maintain and protect and defend a rule-based international order, not only without, but in part also against the United States at the moment? That would be my first point, given, if I may, also that Europe is weakened by the same forces who've turned the United States against this international rule-based orders. You mentioned, you call it nationalism, we call it authoritarian populism, right? And
this is, first of all, I agree with everything you said. I think this is the point. We risk, and I hope it doesn't happen, but we risk finding ourselves in 5, 10 years from now with a very strong transatlantic bond again, but in a completely different political paradigm, because European countries might become like the United States is today. I'm probably even less optimistic than you. So this is a scenario that could happen. Again, we have elections coming up in France. Again, we see the political trends. We risk having that kind of scenario where Europe and the United States agree again, but on the disruption of the rules-based order. This would still leave us in a very bad place when it comes to security and economy and the digital world. Because there, even more than the United States, the problem on security is Russia for us European, and our economy is China. So still there, we would be in a bad place. But hoping that this doesn't happen and working for this not to happen, I think that, yes, if I want to try to focus on something positive that we can actually do, I think the European Union could represent a point of, I would say, gravitas, if that makes any, continuing on Latin, if that makes any sense. Because the moment when, for sure, the United States have been extremely important in the last 70 years for the world order. But I don't 100% agree with you, Joska, when you say the European Union has all been about Americans protecting us. In the beginning, it was. And again, I come from a country that, like Germany, was somehow in a protected space, and with protection came also control. Italy was for 50 years a bloc democracy. And that has been this has saved us. Also because we were at the border and Germany was divided. So history is important. But the last 20, 30 years of the European Union have not been like that. I think that today the European Union is about Europeans, and the last decades of the European integration, including the successive waves of enlargement, have not had anything to do with the United States. The United States have been crucial in the global order as we have seen it functioning or non-functioning, because it's not that the world order in the last 20, 30 years have worked perfectly well, honestly. And what do we want to talk about? Iraq, about Libya, about Afghanistan. So it's not that we come from heaven and paradise, no. The point to me is that, at least what I believe could be done and should be done, hopefully, is for the European Union strengthening itself internally, which is the big challenge indeed. I agree, we would need a sort of refounding moment to work not on the protection of the current multilateral system, but on rewriting the rules of the game for a new global governance architecture. First, because those that have believed and believe in multilateralism in the world and in cooperative international order have not disappeared all of a sudden altogether. Again, it might not be the majority in terms of GDP, but still, we're not completely alone. Again, when I do the list, yeah, you can smile, but it's not completely irrelevant. You see Canada, you see Australia, you see, well, some other countries in East Asia. China itself, I think, needs to be studied very carefully, because in economic terms, that is where the biggest problem comes from us. For us, it's China. But in security terms, I don't think the Chinese have an interest in having a conflictual world order, because that's bad for business for them. So the Chinese might be potentially interested in the future to rewrite the way in which the global order functions. For sure, this global order is over. At least this is my impression, because it reflects a balance of power that doesn't exist anymore. The 5 permanent members of the Security Council, you're right, they're not the big powers anymore. Who rewrites the rules of the game? And for sure, we cannot protect rules that are not representative anymore, but nobody else has an interest in rewriting a system. The biggest European strength is the normative power. We're good at that. We produce norms and regulations for anything. We could apply this skill and this talent to try and redraft the way in which global governance could work with interlocutors that are interested in having some sort of multilateral functioning system. Again, today, the United States, I don't think, are interested, and I think this is not coming back. But there might be others in the world that, even being interested in very strong economic competition, or rather, domain, could be, from a political or security point of view, not so interested in a complete disruption of the functioning. I wouldn't put my hand on fire on that, but it's the only way I can see to avoid just giving up the idea that we have some rules of the game at global level.
So is there still hope for the global order, maybe in a different variety, rewritten?
We should, I recommend strongly to end these kind of illusion production. Because if you will be taken serious in your writing, you need power. The West is gone.
I never said West.
No,
it's a word I never use.
But American power was essential. The Europeans were using it. Without America, we have to think completely new. I share the view that Europe has to defend its values. basic values. The liberal Europe must be the continent or the last resort of a liberal world. I agree, 100%. But for that, you need power. And power needs unity. With these blah, blah institutions, it makes me sick. This parade of heads of state and government moving into the council building in Brussels with all their statements. This is a manifestation of weakness. This impresses nobody in a positive way. If this will not end, if we are not able to invent ourselves and adjust to the new order which we are facing, we will be lost. And look to our economy. There is, Argentina was in 1945 one of the big economies worldwide. And then it went down, down, down. This can happen to us as Europe. Think about that. So we must create a new set. And Europe is not only the EU. In defense, we cannot forget about Britain and Norway. They are extremely important, both of them. So Europe will be the EU plus. So we need a new vision of Europe. And we have to be more focused on a common political will. Otherwise, I'm really concerned that our future will be extremely grim. If we can manage to overcome that obstacles, then I'm pretty optimistic. And we shouldn't forget, one of the big internal challenges is migration. We are rich still, weak and old. If you look rich, weak and old, you shouldn't go in the dark districts of a big city because this will invite bad people to comfort you. So if we cannot fix the problem of migration, and there we have great opportunities, especially in the southern hemisphere.
That's exactly what I want to get at.
And I think it's a sort of historical build-up racism which blocks us. Sorry to say that.
Okay, I sense some sort of optimism, and I want to give that back to you. And before we open up, I mean, you're saying, if I understand you correctly, in order to create and change the global order, you need power, and Europe doesn't have enough power to do that.
Not
The
enough?
question,
No?
not enough. Yeah.
Where is our power?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean,
What
or
does
we,
it
or we
mean?
have it, or we don't have it because we're not united enough to sort of join the power we have to change, to rewrite the global order. Now, the question is, and that brings me to the second point, aren't there other allies? The US is out for the moment, but what about? I mean, I'm not talking about the West and the rest. I think this is a false binary, but there is the so-called global South and the global East, right? And as you rightly said, many countries in the global South and in the global East do have an interest in a rule-based global order. They just want to have different rules because they feel that the rules are not inclusive, they're not fair, they are biased towards the interest of certain states. So I would be interested to know, how do you think, what are the chances of finding allies, Europe's chances of finding new allies in rewriting the global order?
First of all, I don't think that this is a priority for that Europe sees as a priority today. I see it as a priority today, but I don't think there is. I think today we are focusing on the immediate challenges, and I think we're lacking a little bit of mid, long-term perspective on what can be the world in 5, 10, 15, 20 years. The rest of the world, apart from Europe, I think there are many out there that are interested in working with the European Union. One of the big problems we have with power, I think, is that we don't even realize the power we already have, which means that you don't use it. If you have a power and you don't use it, it's not a power. Like, and this is actually visible from the outside. Our biggest power is that we're rich compared to the rest of the world.
And dependent.
Yes, but we are a big market. That's our biggest power, which means that we are a very interesting partner for all the rest of the world that exports. Then this is a problem for our economy, and Germany knows that better than anybody else when you look at cars and so on. But if you talk to the Indians, if you talk to the Brazilians, if you talk to the Chinese, again, China is a different story because of the strategic materials that they have, and only they have the raw materials. But if you think of those huge powers in terms of population, in terms of perspectives 20 years from now, the power that the Europeans have is first the political power, provided we unite and refind or refound ourselves, all to be given, because it's not a given that this happens, and the fact that we are still the biggest market in the world, which is extremely interesting. And also, as we are here, I can say this with some hope to be understood, we are still a center of knowledge that is extremely relevant. The Indians come here to Europe to study, and then they go back. Then they produce back there the artificial intelligence we rebuy, but they come here to study. So we still have the power of knowledge that is quite unique. But we don't put it, we are too fragmented, which is the same in politics, it's the same in defense. We don't invest in the economy of scale at European level. This is our main problem altogether. So I think that if we manage to indeed make that leap that you mentioned about somehow refounding Europe, reinventing our strengths, putting our act together and realizing that we need to act in different fields, not only on defense, I think that in the rest of the world, again, you take different parts of the world. You take Latin America. Again, apart from some, but the vast majority of Latin America looks still at Europe as the point of reference, not only culturally, but also, and for values, but also, for partnerships. And this has started during the first Trump administration. I perfectly remember those moments where people were calling us saying, okay, they have the same feeling that we have, now we are alone. And they look at us to be less alone, because we have the size and the economic size and the market size to be an umbrella for those that are smaller. Again, Latin America, Australia, Canada, Asia, large part of it. The majority of Asia doesn't want to be trapped in a fight between China, Russia, and the United States. It's their biggest nightmare because they're too small to win with any of them. They don't want to do that. So there we would have, in Italian we say praterie, fields of opportunities, if we manage to put our act together and be serious about this. And also not to be, again, sorry if I say that, not to be one issue only, because one of the biggest problems we have with the rest of the world is that if the only topic of discussion we have with them is Russia and Ukraine, they're not even listening. The double standards issue comes up all the time, and I think we have to be open to understand that there are wars in Africa, there are wars in conflicts in Latin America, in Asia. There is a big, big, big problem in the Middle East that is far from being solved now, far from being solved, because honestly, well, but and we have to take that seriously, and we have to be equally concerned about these things and equally active on this as we are on Ukraine, knowing that. I said in the very beginning, I think that the Russian war against Ukraine is specific because of the role of Russia in the United Nations and because of the territorial nature of it. But this doesn't delete the fact that there are other conflicts in the world, and also, honestly, that there are other countries and other regions in the world that suffer from things that we in Europe feel are dramatic for us, but they, in some countries, are much more dramatic than for us. The migration flows, I don't know if I understood correctly what you were saying, but most of the migration and refugee flows still in the world goes south to south. In countries that have already quite some problems to handle. I'm not saying that this is not an issue here, but honestly, the European economies, the European social systems would not hold, would not survive. Entire sectors of our production would simply collapse if it was not for forms of immigration. Of course, it has to be legal and regulated and organized. But this is a topic that in the European, and this is a problem for me, in the European global political scene, I mean, no one in Europe manages to handle the topic of migration seriously on the topic. It is constantly an ideological fight. Well, if you take the numbers, if you take the statistics, it's quite clear. You take the health system, you take our pension system, it would simply collapse without migration. The point is to have functioning channels of legal migration. But nobody even dares to say this in the political scene in Europe, no matter in which part of the political spectrum. This is, I mean, if we're not even able to be true to ourselves on something as basic as that, it's going to be complicated. And this is another element of discussion with the rest of the world, because you go.
Okay, I look at the clock. It's 5:05. I still think we should take a few minutes for a few questions from the audience under the condition that these are short questions, right? And so we will collect a few questions. There should be microphones, I hope. Yes, one is over there. And I'm willing to yield this microphone if there's not another one on the other side. So we collect a few questions, and then I'll give it back to you for some final words of response. Okay. I would like to start in the back. And so I have one in the back, then I have you up here and one here. That makes 3. Last chance, and 4, 5. Okay, good, perfect.
Check.
Yes.
Thanks very much. Absolutely incredible talk. I've got a question about EU enlargement in the Western Balkans, Moldova, and Ukraine. So if we follow Mr. Joschka Fischer's insistence on the power and power projection and capabilities that the EU has, how do you view the current effort, especially by France, to enlarge the EU? And in what sense is that a geopolitical project or just an integration project? Thank you.
Thank you. Perfect. Short, crisp question. So then I'll just give you my microphone if I get it back.
We'll see. Thanks very much for those talks. Maybe slightly provocative question to Federica Mogherini. Do you think Europe has an unfair advantage when it comes to leveraging the potential for the future? We often talk about the fact that we're not as big, as fast, or as united compared to other world regions. But is there anything that makes us unique that can help us do that, so that we not just run after the standards that others have set, but play our own game?
So over there. Yes, exactly.
Thank you. First, can you hear me? Yes. To Mr. Fischer, about security politics Shouldn't we face that Europe is a creation of America, that it is the result of Yalta and Potsdam, it is the result of making total war against Germany and bringing Russia into a position of a nuclear world power at a moment when America was the only nuclear power for 6-7 years, and following the creation of communist China. And would you say that America would never accept the coming together or including Russia into any European Union or any other new creation of European institution, because this would create a bigger power than America? And is this true that America would ever say, no, we will not accept the German and the European intelligence and engineers' abilities together with the Russian resources? We want the Russian resources, or we want this. And so at your time, why couldn't we include Russia into the European Union and to the national country? Is a national parliament not the only legal democratic power which is the most, which has the best legitimation, better than our recent European Union, for instance? And so we shouldn't, what we call nationalism might be democracy. So we could call democracy, although somebody from outside wouldn't like it. And third thing, I'm not accepted by the Sharia. So I got I saw some Syrian people, and they told me they wouldn't accept me here in this country. So I have some problems with any these three.
Sorry to interrupt. This is already 3 questions. This is great. So okay, over there, and then I think you will get the last question then down here. So if you maybe could come over and then pass on the microphone. Thank you.
Would you say that the multi-speed Europe would be a solution? So we don't have all member states going together, but a multi-speeded one, like we have of the coalition of the willing?
Excellent. Thank you. And the last question.
What was the question?
Multi-speed, whether multi-speed Europe is a way out.
Thank you very much. You both talk about the rise in nationalism and national sentiment. My question is very precise. What do you think is the main reason for this current rise of national sentiment, obviously in the United States, but also across the European Union?
Okay. So you should actually, yes, please give this is. No, because we are recording, it would be great if you could use the microphone. But there it comes already. So last question.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your speech. And you forgot one element we have in Europe, the power. This is the power of women, of intelligent and good and young and strong women. And I like to ask, I don't know if there are people from politics here to support, because we are strong. And I think we are able to get this challenge, and I think we will make it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Yes.
There are declarations of power.
Okay, Joschka, you pick whatever questions you feel like addressing.
Well, first of all, it's good to be in such an academic setting. I agree fully, but life is not so easy. So the first question, I'm old, I've forgotten it. It was a very important question.
Enlargement.
Western Balkans.
Ukraine and,
Yeah, enlargement. I think the promises we made to the Western Balkans, they were serious, but they were geopolitical. I was in the office at that time, and I always had the American policy in post-war Germany in my mind. So we had to use the occupation in Western Balkans, especially in the Kosovo, with NATO troops there, to create an environment which would really put aside this terrible nationalistic hate forever. And but it was geopolitical. On the other side, there was no question that the Western Balkans belongs to Europe. I mean, Sarajevo in 1914 played a crucial role. We shouldn't forget that. And for me, the driving force to resist to Milosevic, very personal, was that the Europe of integration and a post-nationalistic Europe cannot coexist with a violent and bloody nationalism in the Western Balkans. Therefore, we had to engage ourselves. But if you look to the reality, we managed it to keep the Western Balkans in balance. That's it. But if we would withdraw our engagement and our troops, the knives would be out again. That's my realistic perspective. Ukraine, it's these nice words of solidarity and so on, and you are Europe, you come to Europe, you are fighting for Europe. The reality was, when the Ukrainian agriculture exports had to be exported across the land. In Poland, immediately, the farmers erupted in a very harsh way. And I don't want to blame the Polish farmers, because I guess all the others, French, German, Italian, would have reacted in the same way. So the access of Ukraine to the European Union will be blocked by the common agricultural market. That's the reality. If we don't have a geopolitical design for us, a new one. And I think access of Ukraine will be an important element of a future peace order. But if such facts like the common agriculture market, the price for corn or whatever, is more decisive than the geopolitical decisions, what are we talking about? The power of Europe is with the farmers. That's the reality, which makes me really frustrated and pessimistic. We need the integration of Ukraine in a longer term perspective. I don't see an alternative to that, because we have to live forever with Russia. And we shouldn't make the same mistake twice. Trust them. We should really try to improve our relations. Why do you clap your hands? You should clap your hands when I would have said, if the Russians would stop, the war would stop immediately. That's the fact. There you can clap. Please? You should walk out of this building on your knees. Huh? It's, I don't want a new world war, but I don't want to be suppressed by ideas. By ideas put forward with a Kalashnikov.
Okay, let's get to the question.
Yeah. So, and there was one more question. What was it?
There was one on multi-speed Europe. Was
I can take that if you need.
Okay.
Yeah, I can take a few of them if you want. On this first one about enlargement, I perfectly agree. Actually, this is also why the College of Europe opened a campus in Tirana in Albania last year, because the idea is that as we open the campus in Poland 30 years ago to prepare the big wave of enlargement in the early 2000s, we hope that there we can prepare the ground for the enlargement, or actually, I shouldn't say, we should also not say enlargement, we should say the full reintegration, the full unification of the European continent in the Western Balkans, at least, because in the Western Balkans, there's no external border. It's completely inside the European Union already. I believe that this is a geopolitical project. I think that we finally realized that size matters, and that whenever we leave open spaces, others get in, not necessarily because they have a stronger influence, but because we have not been present enough. And in the countries that are currently candidate countries, not all of them, because Turkey is still officially a candidate country, even if negotiations are frozen. But in the Balkans, in Moldova and in Ukraine, I think that the influence that the European Union can have with a credible enlargement process, with a credible accession process, is not comparable to any other. So the space is there if we are there to be consistent. I share your bitterness on Ukraine. I think that given the size of Ukraine and given the fact that the moment when Ukraine will come in, all the policies and all the budget of the European Union will need to be completely turned upside down. I think this is at the same time the most necessary and the most difficult. I don't know if there will be the possibility or there will be anyone that will have the strength to convince the farmers, to convince, but not only in Poland, in France, in Germany, wherever, to completely change the budget structure of the European Union. All countries would become net contributors in one day. So that is a big thing, but I think it would be needed. But I think that in the meantime, in any case, in the Balkans, that's much easier. The population of this, is Albania or Montenegro coming in really going to be a problem? Obviously not. We worked at 28 with the United Kingdom after the Brexit referendum perfectly well. Perfectly well. Still, we worked. And Boris Johnson was at the table as a foreign secretary, and we took decisions at unanimity on defense, and it worked. So I don't believe in the argument that we need first to reform the European Union to have new member states. No. I think we could function perfectly well with new member states. But again, Ukraine might be a different thing, also because with the size of the population, the qualified majority voting balance changes. So that is another thing that worries, I think, member states quite a lot. Even if I think that, bottom line, I think it should happen. I think it will happen if the elections in some member states in the next 3-4 years will allow that. France, Germany, to name two. Multi-speed Europe, well, we already have it in some things. It can always be possible. Treaties allow that. Flexibility is there. Personally, I'm not a big fan because of what Joska was saying before. We would need more unity. Multi-speed Europe, by definition, divides us. And there are some that go faster or go deeper, and others that stay out. And this weakens, I think, well, makes us faster, but weakens the impact of the unity. I think that really in this moment, it would be much, much more needed to stay united. Of course, the unity presuppose the facts that all member states have as an objective that of having a common policy. If this is a precondition that is not met anymore because one or two member states have as an objective that of preventing the union from taking a decision, then of course, multi-speed Europe is the only way forward, and qualified majority is the only way forward in all sectors. But ideally, I think keeping the unity and even reinforcing the unity would be a much better option. And last but not least, what makes us unique? What is the special advantage that European Union can have? Again, in very pragmatic terms, of course, is the single market. I mean, in technical terms, in economic terms, we are the largest market in the world. That is the advantage we have in negotiations with other parties and our main power today. But in general terms, I think that what can make us stronger, of course, if we use it, is the normative power. We are, again, it's not a power, and this is, it's not a power as it could be recognized in the world of today. Because today, the only power that is recognized is the power of the strength, of the being military strength or in the conflict. Our power...
Financial.
Yes, financial.
Common European capital market. It would be extremely important.
Exactly. That is... So we could potentially have the power. We have to have the political will to have it and to use it. That would be, yeah, probably there were a few other questions, but I think that time is running out.
Absolutely. We've already 50 minutes over time. So thank you very much for this fascinating discussion. I won't even try to summarize. But one of the key takeaway messages is that Europeans should stop navel gazing, look down the abyss, take a deep breath, get their act together, and start working with the partners throughout the world who share our interest in a rule-based multilateral global order. And with this, I hand over to Laura Viola, who is a professor at the John F. Kennedy for Political Science at the John F. Kennedy Institute, and the FU representative on the Academic Council of Europaeum. So Laura, you have the privilege and the pleasure to conclude this event.
That's right. Good afternoon, everyone. It is my honor to bring this event to a close. First of all, a few words of thanks. I'd like to thank Federica Mogherini and, of course, Joschka Fischer for sharing your insights, experience, and this thought-provoking, if not maybe pessimistic discussion. And also, of course, thank you, Tanja Bötze, for moderating so expertly and those probing questions. I also want to extend a special thanks to the Europaeum, on whose academic council and executive council I represent, the FU, for organizing this event. We're honored to have held this inaugural lecture and look forward to many more in the future, especially thanks to Anthony Teasdale and to Andrew Graham and Sasha Panayotidis for all the organizational work and the whole team for making this possible. Thanks also to our team here at the FU, the International Office, Herbert Grieshoff, Nora Jacobs, and the entire team who made this possible organizationally and technically. And finally, thank you, all of you, for coming to this event, for showing so much interest, and for being engaged in these challenging and pressing issues. I think there's, if any sign of optimism, it's that there is civil engagement and willingness to talk and listen and think about how to move forward on these ideas. So thank you for coming, and you're all invited now to continue the discussions over some drinks outside in the lobby. Thank you, everyone.